Okay, so Yichvod Amaradatra Rav Zargari Yedidi Harav Levi Chaim Rosh Kollel. So I wanted to speak about a subject that unfortunately many people don't approach this subject because they have an attitude of all or nothing. They say, well, it's too hard for me to keep this subject of Yashan, and it's not possible for me to possibly follow all of whatever is possible to be kept, because that means even the kalim, I can't eat from the kalim because that's tarif also, so I may as well not keep anything. Unfortunately, that's the attitude that many people have, and because of that, many people don't keep Chadash, even though we're going to see that it's not a simple matter at all. And I want to split this shir into two. Number one, I want to discuss a little bit of the halachic aspect, and number two, I want to discuss practically what's going on in America, a little bit in California as well, but it's mostly America because the shipping industries, how the flour comes in, is really going to depend on what's going on in all of America, where the flour comes from, oats, barley, what's more of a problem, what's less of a problem, and the hachra you ask the rabbanim on your own. I'm just bringing some tzdadim and what some of the poskim say in the modern day question. It's very important to emphasize before I start that we're going to see clearly that the poskim were discussing a situation when they discussed Yashan and Chadash that is different than nowadays, Lichumra and Likula. They discussed a situation and they came up with heterim that literally they didn't have other food. They were talking about situations where it was chaye nefesh, where they were discussing if you would be machmir on yashan, you wouldn't have bread to eat. If you were machmir on beer, you wouldn't have drinks because that was most of their drinks. So it's not so applicable nowadays that Baruch Hashem we could eat a lot of products, as we're going to see nowadays, without being so machmir, without being b'shatat chak. Even if you want to be machmir on chadash, there's a lot what to eat. So it's not as much as a shatat chak as they had in those days. On the other hand, in those days, they had a chumrah that we don't have. They had a situation where, for example, they were living in Poland, the Magen Avram and the Taz. They were living in very cold countries, in Poland, Lithuania, and Ukraine, where by the time the planting season came, it was Vadei Chadash, and they didn't have storage. So they had situations where by them, the product that they had in front of them was Vadei Chadash, which we're going to see is not that way nowadays. So there's a chumrah, when we discuss the poskim, there's a chumrah and a kula. That's one thing to remember. So let's start with some of the basics. I'm going to go through it quickly because it's a short Friday. That it says in the pasuk in Parashat Emor, Lechem ve'karmel ve'kalilo tochelu ad etzem hayom hazeh, that there is an isser of eating any tvua, any wheat, and there's wheat grains. There are the 5 grains that are wheat, barley, oats, spelt, and rye. We're going to see that 2 of them are not really relevant, but wheat, barley, and oats are quite relevant nowadays. Spelt and rye are always yashan in America. I'm talking about America 2018, 2019. I'm not talking about what used to be, what was. I don't know. I'm talking about right now. Bayamim ha'elu, spelt and rye is not an issue. The other ones are. Now, there's this issue of chadash is a mitzvot that are talui ba'aretz lechora, like orla and kilayim. It's things that have to do with ziraim. However, there's a stam mishnah in Masechet Orla that says that that Orla is noeg ben ba'aretz ben b'chutz la'aretz. Ben ba'aretz ben b'chutz la'aretz. And then there's a Gemara in Masechet Kiddushin, there's a Mishnah in Masechet Kiddushin, the Tanakama says that Chadash is noeg ba'aretz, and Rabbi Eliezer says it's noeg ben ba'aretz ben b'chutz la'aretz. Then you have other there's a Gemara in Menachot that discusses the issue. The Rif and the Rambam and the Rosh categorically bring down the Mishnah that say that ben ba'aretz ben b'chutz la'aretz Chadash is noeg. Deoraita. Chadash is noeg ben ba'aretz ben b'chutz la'aretz without any question. And that's, if you look at all the Rishonim, Rehita Hasugya is that way. Marana Shulchan Aruch in Yoredea Siman Resh Tzadik Gimel is posek like that behedya. Marana Shulchan Aruch is posek that Chadash is noeg ben ba'aretz ben b'chutz la'aretz. Stama de halacha. There's nothing to discuss. There's nothing to discuss even. That Chadash is noeg ben ba'aretz ben b'chutz la'aretz. I'm sorry, I forgot to bring a Yoredea Siman Resh Tzadik Gimel. If somebody can help me out on that, I'm sorry. I don't. That it's written Chadash is noeg ben ba'aretz ben b'chutz la'aretz. So here you have stama de halacha. It should be like any other psak that Chadash is aser also in chutz la'aretz. So why are we even discussing this? Well, we're discussing it because otherwise we wouldn't be able to eat many things. We would be stuck. And there's a saying that I'm sure Rabbi Zagari is very familiar with, because that's probably the motto of his life and many others who start an institution, is that necessity is the mother of all inventions. Necessity is the mother of all inventions, which means when sometimes you have a tchak, there comes out heterim somehow. That's what happens. If you open up thank you very much. If you open up the poskim, the Shulchan Aruch writes, Hayisur noeg ben ba'aretz ben b'chutz la'aretz b'shen yisur b'shen ovet kochavim. Then the Rama says, Mikol makom, nevertheless, kol stam tvu asher ilachar pesach mikoach sfek sfeka. Where does he get this from? It's not a Rama. People say, oh, it's the Rama, it's not the Shulchan Aruch. Tshuvot HaRosh, brought down in the Bet Yosef. Bet Yosef doesn't always bring what he brings in the Bet Yosef. He can't. That's a klal. Everybody knows that he's not going to bring everything, but he brings it lilo cholek, the Tshuvot HaRosh. And the Tshuvot HaRosh starts off by bringing the Shitat Rabbeinu Baruch. Here's one of the first Rishonim that are quoted, that Rabbeinu Baruch says that we could rely on an opinion that Chadash is not noeg b'chutz la'aretz. Chadash is not noeg in chutz la'aretz, and it could be that he's basing himself on the Tanakama in Masechet Kiddushin, but this is how he's posek, that Chadash is noeg in only in Eretz Yisrael and not in chutz la'aretz. But after he brings those opinions, the Rosh says Matzati b'shem haram. Mashanu shotim shechar. So why do we drink beer? Yeshom mishum sfek sveka. Safek chadash, safek yashan. Listen to this; it's very important. Safek that this is chadash. Safek this is tvua yashana. The imtim tzarim chadash. Even if you want to say it's tvua chadamsha, maybe this tvua chadash hishrisha kodem omer. Maybe it took root. It was planted before the omer. This is a very interesting sfek second. Safek maybe it was from last year. It's from this year. Maybe it's from before Pesach, which means last year. We're going to discuss later how Rabbi Kiva Eger deals with this suffix sveka. Everybody understands that it's a very difficult suffix sveka, but it's not the Rama's chidush. It's the Tshuvot HaRosh. It's Tshuvot HaRosh brought down, and the Rama brings it down, and the Achronim are not don't take issue with it. Rabbi Kiva Eger brings a tshuva from the Mutzal Me'esh who asks a question, but the Achronim basically go with this suffix sveka. We're gonna discuss that further, but all the Achronim, the Nosei Kelim, have a hard time. How are we posek this halacha? So each one has their own derech. The Magen Avram says that it could be that we rely on the stama of the Tanakama, and even though the stama in Masechet Orla came beforehand and Seder La Mishnah, and it could be that in Kiddushin was the main stam, which was the Tanakama, and you could rely on that stama when you have to. The Taz has another chidush that he wants to say that it could be you bisomech on b'shat adchak on a shita yichida. Maybe b'shat adchak you could be somech on a shita yichida, and nowadays it's a shat adchak. The Beragola also brings that he found a Yerushalmi that's mashma that in chutz la'aretz b'nei Yisrael were able to eat Yashan, were able to eat chadash in chutz la'aretz, so maybe you could rely on that. So the Beragola, the Magen Avram, the Taz, they all find a different way how to be matir, but they're all being matir b'shat adchak. They all find a way how to be matir, and the Beragola's famous lashon is that the Beragola writes, מה שהקילו בזה רוב רבנן קשישי קדמי ובטראי בהרבה מדינות לעניות דעתי סמכו על ירושלמי יש מסכת חלה דמשל ירושלמי they were מקיים מצוות החלה בליל פסח ביתם לארץ מה שיהיו תגרו ובתכם מוכרים להם ועוד אמרו סוף עורלה that רבי אלעזר מפורש סביב למתניתא יחידה היא ולא יקם לן כבתה והחדש מותר בחוץ לארץ. He brings different rayot, but he says basically there's Yerushalmi how Bnei Israel were able to eat challah before the first Omer was brought. So obviously it's because it was chutz laaretz. So they all find a heter somehow. Comes along the Gra, the Bira Gra, and he's like fire, and he says, and he says very strong lishonot. אבל אין דבריו כדאי אפילו ליישב המנהג, and he says שגג, he says ta'ud gadol hu, v'divrei bahag ta'ud gadol. Some people think it means the bahag, some people brought the bahag that way also, he means the beragola. Divrei beragola ta'ud gadol, ve'en tzarich lehashiv alehem, and not only that, כבר היכו על קודקודו כל האחרונים, ושגגה יצא מתחת ידו, טובה היה לבהג שתיקה. He should have been quiet. Where does the Bira Gra speak so strong about any other subject? Well, about philosophy, he spoke very strong, but the Gra, very, very, very sharp words over here. So the Torah Tmima in Parashat Emor says, we find very strong words from the Gaon Mivilna. How could that be? He says, because it says in the Gemara Masechet Kiddushin Daf Lamed Vav that anybody who says Ein Orla Bechutz La'aretz Yikaber Banav, that his children are going to be Chaz v'Shalom, he's going to suffer tragedies. So since it's such an inyan that's so chamur that people are saying that Chadash is not knowing Chutz La'aretz, you have to come up very strong. You have to come up very strong, and that's why the Gra came very strong. And he says there's nothing what to rely on. There's the Rif, Rosh, Rambam. They all pass in the Mishnah and Orla and Malezuz Mizeh, and it's Aser de Oraita. So the Gaon Mivilna took a very strong stance, and the Mishnah Berurah and Siman Taf Peitet has also he goes through the whole inyan, and he knows how difficult it is, but he says that nowadays a person should try to rely on this. He says a person should try to rely as much as possible. Now then he says in Bir Allah a very important point that I mentioned at the beginning of this year. He says, we don't have the right to protest, but nevertheless, there was some achronim that were miyashiv the minhag. Mikol makom, we find that some people are choshesh for so many things, Chalav Yisrael, and even if nowadays you know that it's okay, but they're choshesh for Chalav Yisrael, and they're choshesh for all types of bishul akum and pata akum. They're careful and everything, but Yashan they don't keep. V'sibata davara'it, he says the Chafetz Chaim. Maybe the reason is because they say, well, you have to be machmer in everything. Mishmarim v'sheichar, can't have whiskey, no kiddush club. V'chen pletat kelim, and so too all the kelim are asur. They say, well, listen, there's minhag olam lahakel, so I'm also going to be mekel. I can't deal with it otherwise. Aval says the Chafetz Chaim, and that אין הדבר נכון. Somebody wants to be machmer in everything, he's going to be lenient totally the other way. So he says, he says, rather everybody should try to keep as much as they can. He says as much as they can. That's the Bir Halacha, and that's going to be the guiding light over here, because there are significant poskim that came out to be miyashiv the minhag olam. Famous Aruch HaShulchan's words is that since the Or Zarua, the Sefer Or Zarua came out, and the Or Zarua says Lehedya, that we can paskin like the Mishnah in Masechet Kiddushin of the Tanna Kama that says that Ein Chadash Noeg B'chutz Laaretz Or Zarua LaTzadik UleYishrei Lev Simcha, that his words are emet le'amito, and a person could rely on that, and they don't have to be reluctant, and there's what to rely on, and therefore the Aruch HaShulchan says to be mekel. The Sefer Pardes Yosef brings in Parashat Emor that the Baal Shem Tov had a dream that when the Bach came b'Shamayim, tzininu et Gehinom, they cooled down Gehinom for 60 days. Because of his kavod. So once he woke up, he saw that the Bach, I didn't even mention the Bach yet, they gave so much kavod to the Bach, So he said that that bring me beer, and he was mekel on the Isser. What's this Bach? The Bach is known as Rosh HaMekilim, because the Bach in Siman Reish Tzadik Gimel brings another heter. He bases himself on sources that want to say that tvua of goyim, tvua that goyim own. In other words, we're not talking about that it's in chutz la'aretz it was grown. It belongs to a goy. It's patur from chadash. It's not called chadash. And he says this minag pashut. He saw Gdolei Olam being knowing that way. That's Rav Shachna. Rav Shachna, I think, was the Rav of the Shach. Rav Shlomo Luria, the Marshal. And he says, he also, Sha'alti ta Ma'or Agador of Leba Bar Betzalel. That's the Maral. And all of them, Hitzati Lefanav Mashaliti, I told them my Chidush, and he says, Velo haya mi shesatar dvarai. Nobody argued on me behedya. Nobody argued on me behedya. It's already something. I once saw in a scum of a sefer, one of the Talmidim of Rav David Soloveitchik. He says, I asked my Mori Rabbi the question, and he answered me, nu. So they agreed with him. They agreed with him. He says, that's what he says.
The Gaon make the chiluk between
no. Yeah, he. I think he also discusses the Bach, and he says there isn't what to rely on. I don't remember right now.
So he's not mafchin.
He's not mafchin at all. Nobody makes such a chil. Yeah, he says the gam shekatav Bach for he koat kokodos. He's also arguing on the Bach. He's arguing on everyone. And after he goes be'arichut gadol, he says it would be yoara to be machmer in front of anybody else. You can't in front of Talmidei Chacham. You can't be machmer. So on that, the Baal Shem Tov says that since the Bach they were machshivoto so much v'shamayim, so you could rely on the Bach. It doesn't say, so people think that the Hasidim have a Masorah, they have some type of musik, that the Bach is something that the Baal Shem Tov dreamed, that the halacha is like the Bach. It doesn't say that. I looked in the Sefer Neta Gavriel, it brings a lot of different versions to the story. It's all the same story, that the Baal Shem Tov had a dream that the Bach, Yichshivu et Bach me'od v'shamayim, and that's why till today, the Hasidim are very lenient on this. On the contrary, they try not to hold of Yashan because they said then there's going to be bugs in the flour. I know in the city, there's one person that tried to start to be machmir so much in Yashan, and he's from a Hasidic background, and then he tried one time for his consumers, of course, because he wouldn't have done it for himself, and he says, no, I'm not doing it anymore because I found bugs. A lot of people keep flour. They know how to keep the flour, and they don't find bugs in it. So you could find excuses, but it matters what approach you're coming from. If you're coming from a Hasidic approach, you're going to have a hard time convincing somebody to keep Yashan. But because they have a Masorah from the Baal Shem Tov. But it's very important to note that even the Baal Shem Tov, he was saying he was coming mishat atchak. He was coming because it was a difficult situation, and he says, okay, we could rely on the Bach in this case. It doesn't mean that it's the halacha is hefker, and if there's no inyan to be machmir, if you're able to be machmir nowadays. But al kol panim, that's why you're going to find that the Hasidim are much more lenient on this inyan. What? On Vadei Chadash. He'll put Vadei Chadash in front of them as well. Now, there's a story that I heard from Rav First that he says that they came to the Satmar Rebbe and somebody wanted to make all the bakeries in Williamsburg Yashan, and he said there are other things to deal with first. He didn't say that it's not something that we keep at all. He said the other things to deal with first. It was in those days where there was major kashrut issues also. Nowadays, Baruch Hashem, Achsher Dara. I'm not saying there isn't issues, but definitely it's different nowadays than in those days. Okay, now that's a little bit biskirak tzara. The Sephardic poskim didn't discuss Yashan and Chadash so much. I don't know why, but they didn't discuss it. It could be they were in hotter countries, so the planting season was a little bit later. It's hard to be mevar. I tried to find this out. I couldn't find so much, but they're not marich so much. What I do know is that, and this we're going to mention, the Marikash, Rav Yaakov Castro brings in the end of the Shulchan Aruch, writes a very important thing. He says, "B'medinot shenimtzaim tvua rova tvua miyamot hachoref, you could always be mekel on Yashan. Whenever you have a suffix, if it's tvua yashana, you could be mekel on Yashan. When you have rova, I don't even say it says it doesn't say berov. He says in a Medina where you have matzui also tvua yashana, you could be mekel on the Isser Chadash. Now a couple of important halachic details before we get into the mitziyut. I don't want to take too much of everyone's time. So the first thing is the Sfeik Rabbi Kivei of the Ramah. The Ramah says, which is based on the Rosh, that that there's a sveka anytime you don't know where the flour is from, where the flour is from, you could be lenient. Safek goes from last year, and even if it's from this year, maybe it was nishrosh kodem omer. Asks Rabbi Veger, it's a safek mishem echad. It's all one safek. If it was from last year, it's mutter, and if it's from this year, but it was planted before, it's all mutter. If it was from this year's planted before, it's also from last year. So that's the same safek. So that's what the Sefer Mutzal Me'esh asks, brought down in Rabbi Kiva Eger. The Aruch HaShulchan answers very pashut. He says that there is a fundamental difference between Tvua Yashana Tvua that was planted and milled already before the Omer, and Tvua that was Nishrash that took root before the Omer. Because if you have to bring a korban, you can't bring a korban from Tvua Yashana. You could only bring a korban HaOmer from Tvua that was Nishrash before the Omer, and then you harvest it after the Omer. You could only bring a korban Omer mina chadash. And therefore, says the Aruch HaShulchan, there's an nafka mina ben asefekot, since there is a difference between both of these fikot. There's a halachic difference between Tvua Yeshana and Tvua Chadash Shenishrash Kodem HaOmer. It's called a valid sfek. There's other tirutzim also, but this is a commentary that people say over the name of the Aruch HaShulchan. So there is a sfek, whether it's applicable nowadays or not, we'll see in a moment. There's another important inyan, whether we say that even if the tvua is you're misupak, you're not sure if it's tvua chadash or yeshana, why don't you say it's called a davar sheyesh lo matirin? Why don't you say that tvua is called a davar sheyesh lo matirin? And in truth, it's a mefursh gemara in Masechet Nedarim that chadash is a davar sheyesh lo matirin. There is in the beginning of Masechet Bitzah, I'm not going to get into the whole pilpul, there is a Mordechai at the beginning of Masechet Bitzah that says that Yashan is a davar is not called davar sheyesh chadash is not called davar sheyesh lo matirin, and they ask on the bottom, what do you mean? It's a mefurish gemara. So some people they have all types of yeshuvim that since there's it's going to become usher again. So it's not called davar sheyesh lo matirin. It's a whole pilpul. There's a kritu pleti in I think Simon Kufdalit in Yordea that discusses this, but. Well, that's going to be the question. That's what we're going to discuss in a moment. But so far, but the whether chadash itself is a davar sheyesh lo matirin, the Gemara Nedarim says. But the Shach says on a sfeka you don't say davar sheyesh lo matirin. What does he mean? He writes in a couple of places in Yordea. He brings this down, and in Yordea in Simon Kufyud, I believe, he discusses that when you say a sfeka, even b'makom davar sheyesh lo matirin, it's allowed. How? In other words, it's mefurish in the Rosh. Something that is eventually going to have a heter. Why should you be somech on a bittul when something's going to eventually have a heter? That's classic. Why you should be able to say davar sheyesh lo matirin even on a sveka. But says the Rosh, and the Shach is posek like this lehalacha. But something where there's a safek if it's found bichlal in this product, and there's a sfika if it's found in this product. Safek it's yashan or chadash. That means there might not be any vaday chadash in here. And even if you want to say it's there, maybe it was planted before the Yom, it's also allowed. The sfek is telling you there's no isur, there's no sibat isur. There's a suffix whether the isur is found or not. That the Shach says you do say sfek. It's like a vade and you don't say davar sheyesh lo matirin. When do we say that davar sheyesh lo matirin is usur even by a sfek? If you have something that fell in one ta'arovot, so you know it's for sure there, and that first ta'arovot goes into the second ta'arovot, then you know there's vade mitzvah isur. You can't say you can't be mutter, because why don't you just wait till it becomes mutter? But something that there might not be in the sfek a sibat isur bichlal, then for sure you could say. So therefore, on a sveka, the Shach says we do say davar sheyesh lo matirin, we don't say davar sheyesh lo matirin, and we allow it. So there's no problem with davar sheyesh lo matirin. Furthermore, the Aruch HaShulchan says, and I think this is what you're mitkaven to, is that nowadays that a lot of the wheat that we have already went through a process that it's chametz. It went through washing, and it could have been in a process of machmitz. You can speak to Rabbi Jervel and OU about that. Nowadays, a lot of the flour is that way as well. Therefore, you might have to sell your chametz before your flour before Pesach. So the if you're machmer on vaday chametz, that is, so you have to be mevaer that chametz from the world before Pesach ever comes. When I wrote when I first moved to Westwood in 2005, there's a place called Westwood. It's far out over there, and I didn't know what to do about Yashan or not. So I asked my Rebbe, Rebbe Zriel Orbach, I'm moving to Los Angeles. Who should I ask questions to? He says, oh, in America, go ask Reb Shlomo Miller, he's in Toronto. LA, Toronto is not the same place exactly. It's a few thousand miles apart. But I don't know, maybe he was Menavis something, because 5 years later I actually moved to Toronto. But at that time in 2005 I sent a question to Reb Shlomo Miller, and he answered me right on the spot. I don't know what schut I had for that. But every single word in that teshuvah requires iyun. I have it in front of you because they just recently printed a very, very limited edition of his teshuvot, and it's written like this: Asher לפי נודעתי רוב הדברים נמצא בסביבותיכם מתבואים ישנה, ואף לספרים דרוב לא מהני בדבר שיש לו מתיר. Even if you want to say that you go according to rov, but rov you don't say דבר שיש לו מתיר. כך כתבו האחרים, החמץ של חדש לא מקרה דבר שיש לו מתיר. כי צריך לבערו לפני הפסח. It's an Aruch HaShulchan, it doesn't quote it, but it's an Aruch HaShulchan, that since you have to be mevared before Pesach, it's not a problem. So we don't have a problem with Davar Shematir. So Sveika we can rely on. Davar Shematir we rely on. We need as many Heterim as we can, by the way, because we're gonna need to find. So we want to try to build up the Heterim. Number 3, Zman HaShrasha. How long does it have to be in the ground beforehand? So the Shach brings from the Trumat Hadeshen that as long as it's 3 days beforehand, it's okay. As long as the Tvua was planted 3 days beforehand, it's okay. Ask the Noda B'Yehuda. A lot of Acharonim say it's a Mefurish Gemara that's only according to one opinion, but there's another opinion in the Gemara Masechet Pesachim that says it has to be you have to wait 2 weeks. How can you say 3 days? You have to wait 2 weeks. So the Mishkanot Yaakov says that the Gemara over there was talking about Ilanot, whether it has to wait 2 weeks or 3 days. But don't tell me that by Zra'im you have to wait 2 weeks. By 2 weeks already, it's gonna almost grow after 2 weeks. Of course, 3 days is enough. That's what the Mishkanot Yaakov writes, and actually this is quoted in the Tshuva. Zman HaShrasha k'zera gimel yamin v'nei Pesach u'mevor Mishkanot Yaakov v'tshuvot ha'acharonim brurim hadvarim brurim. So he brings in the Tshuva from Rav Miller, he also brings, you can rely on this. This is the halacha. B'tchei Tshuva says dvarim brurim on the Mishkanot Yaakov. So you can rely on 3 days. You can rely on 3 days. You can rely on Davar Shematir. You can rely on Sveika. So what do we do nowadays?
Just for California, you say?
No, he's talking about generally. He says, that we're going to discuss California in a minute. We'll see why should it be different. But let's get to the practical issues nowadays. I'm sure all of this, the Tzibur Talmidei Chachamim know, but I'll mention to you some of the research that I came up with, and some of the Tzadei Akula that we could discuss, and what to be machmir on. There are 3 grains be'etzem we have to speak about. We have to speak about wheat, we have to speak about barley, and we have to speak about oats. Let's start with wheats. There are at least 5 categories of wheats, some divided into 7, some divided even into more than that. But for simplicity's sake, we know that there are 2 crops. There's the winter crop, and then there's the summer crop. The winter crop is always Yashan. Summer crop could be Yashan, could not be Yashan. It depends when they plant it. It depends every single year. This year, Pesach's going to come out April, April something. So you have to know when it's going to be planted. Last year, it was like April 1st, so it was a little bit on the, I wouldn't say early side, but it was on the average side. So that means that they would have to plant 3 days beforehand. They would have to plant 3 days beforehand. So you have spring wheat and you have winter wheat. April 19th. Now, we're going to have a good year next year for Yashan then. We're going to have a very good year. So if you're going to go with the in winter wheat, there's soft red, there's hard red, there's durum wheat that is used mostly for pasta. There's blended wheat. But we're going to try to simplify things and say that there are mainly 2 categories. There's winter wheat and spring wheat. I'm just saying this in a very simple form. What is the difference between winter wheat and spring wheat? Where there's more protein. There's more protein, more gluten. That means it's going to be more elasticy. So products that you find that the dough is very elasticy, they will try to get a wheat that has more protein in it, which is usually spring wheat. Winter wheat is more conducive for things that are crumbly and crummy, for example, cookies, pretzels. And that's common knowledge that people know that cookies and pretzels and anything that is more that doesn't need as much of an elastic consistency to it is Yashan, and anything else and things that require elastic heat, like pizza dough or bagels, those will require wheat that has a higher protein, just spring wheat. Which the first thing I would say is that if a person wants to be machmir on Yashan, he should be machmir on pizza dough, he should be machmir on bakery goods that usually use elasticy dough. And when is he machmir? Machmir from the time when he knows it's only half of the year. So it's not that hard. We're starting off with, he wants to be machmir on bakery goods, he wants to be machmir on pizza dough, he wants to be machmir on pasta, because a lot of it is made from durum wheat, which is also spring wheat, which is also, once again, elasticy. And that is only going to be for half of the year. Not that bad. It's not like you can't be machmir on Yashan at all.
It's like 7 to 8 months, no?
We're going to see. We're going to see. We're going to see. Pasta is made from durum wheat, so l'chora you would have to be machmir. But we're gonna. It's more. Yeah, it's more. It's sticky more. It's durum. Usually they use durum wheat. They use durum wheat, and durum wheat is a spring crop. That's what we have to know. How elasticy or not, you have to ask the cooks for that. But they use durum wheat, and that's usually the spring crop. Now, that is step one. However, when you start looking a little bit deeper into the inyan, you will see that it's very hard to come down to the bottom of it. In 1970s, the Russians stopped. The Americans started exporting their wheat more to Russia, and they didn't have as much surplus, and therefore the wheat that people started being more concerned that there's not going to be any more Yashan in America, because they export it all and they're going to use whatever is made, they're going to use it right away. And there are some people that came together, and Rabbi Herman from Muncie was an initiator of this, and he started creating Yashan lists. It was basically, they used codes to figure out when things were planted, to tell you, and listen closely, to tell you when things are Vada Yashan. And anything else is a suffix and you don't know. The lists are not telling you what's a Vada Chadash. They're telling you what's Vada Yashan. And Kol HaKavod, HaMachmir Tavo Alav Bracha. And there are simplified lists that the Star K comes up with as well. A very easy way to know what's Vada Yashan or not. And these lists are great to use. You could know what's Vada Yashan or not. Let's say somebody is found in a place where he doesn't know when something's Chadash or Yashan. What's the Ikar HaHalacha? What's the Ikar HaHalacha? So we have a klal like this. We have a klal of Rov in the Torah. If you have, and especially we saw the Marikash that says that if you have a country that has Tavua that is Yashan, you could rely on Mitzad HaSafik that maybe this is Yashan as well. Anybody could open up the statistics and we'll see that Rov, unquestionably, Rov Tavua in America is winter wheat. Nothing to talk about. Rov Tavua in America is winter wheat. What are you going to come and tell me? That, okay, but when I'm having something that's elasticy, it's not a Rov. Maybe that is Rov spring wheat. On this, I've spoken to many, many different millers in America, what are people who create the flour, and I have not gotten a clear answer. But I'll tell you what they have told me. For example, I went to one of the bakeries in this city, and I looked at their bags, which are spring wheat. We have spring wheat, and we don't keep Yashan. And I took a picture of their flour, and I called the milling agency. One of them is in Kansas, another one in North Dakota, and that's where they do their wheat. Last year when I called them, they told me, this is what they told me. They told me last year. Well, this year was a very good year for us for planting. We were able to plant very early because there wasn't so much frost. It wasn't so cold. We planted most of our wheat St. Patrick's Day, March 17th. That means most of their spring wheat in that North Dakota plant was planted before spring, before Pesach. So I was able to eat from that bakery that year. I was very happy. Now, and you have to know, because sometimes it's going to come from different shipping ports. But this year, they planted later. They didn't plant so early. They planted later. Most of the wheat was planted after Pesach. However, the person tells me, we always keep a large amount of stock because we're afraid of the prices going up, and we always keep a large amount of stock. So I say, so how do you know what to decide? He says, well, usually spring wheat will be used for bagels and pizza. But, and this is Masiyach Lefitum, I understand, I'm not relying on anything, I'm just trying to gather information. It says, but they have a lot of stock, they have a lot of surplus. He says, everybody has a lot of surplus. I said, even oats, most of the oats that America grows, they send off for cattle field, they give to the behemoths, and they import from Canada oats, and that's a lot of times it's Yashan. He told it's Chadash because Canada is colder and they plant later. He says, even oats, everybody at Quaker has their own oats production. They keep a surplus. Oats keeps a surplus. He told me barley, whatever good barley they have, they're going to send directly to the to make malt and to make beer, and the rest of the barley that's left, that's what you get on the shelves. Could be from the surplus. It could be not from the surplus. Say, Ribono Shalom, I'm never able to be mevar this. He says a lot of times we use it from the surplus. A lot of times the winter wheat has enough protein that we use it instead of the spring wheat. A lot of times we'll blend it. If it's blended, if you hold that kemach is davar yavesh and it's not a davar lach, maybe rov it, it's going to be okay. So I'll say, Ribono Shalom, you have over here, you don't even know if it's going to be winter wheat. Some years it's going to be planted early, and some years it's going to be planted later, but it could be it's being used from the surplus. Say, how could you ever get down to the bottom of it? We have a group of Talmid, we have a room full of Talmidei Chachamim over here, that I know most of you probably don't know this information, and people expect to say, well, it's a davar she'efshar levarer. It's written in some of the modern day Sfarim that, well, it's a sfeik of efshar levar. First of all, the Gaon Mevilna brings in Siman Kuf Yud that something that's a sfeik, you don't have to be mevar. And even the Pri Megadim argues, he says, well, it depends if it's a tircha merube, you don't have to be mevar. Tircha muat, maybe. This is called a tircha merube. Up until now, I don't know if something is yashan or something is chadash. I have no idea of being able to tell you on a process yashan or chadash. I know that I could rely on cookies and on pretzels and on many products. So I started looking into, okay, what's for sure spring wheat or not. Flour in the shuk, a lot of times they use winter wheat. This is information that's readily available. Anybody who wants to do research on the internet, he can look. Flour, they usually use winter. They like gold medal. I think they're mafarsim themselves is always yashin. But I'm saying even if you're going to take any flour from the shelves, they don't use 100% spring wheat. There's baker's flour, special flour that the bakeries are going to get. Those have more of a chazaka of being spring wheat. Once again, even spring wheat, I don't know what there is. So I do think that if we put pressure on the bakeries to keep Yashan, the pizza stores to keep Yashan, that will be already a big revach. That'll already be a big revach. And why not? If we're able to be machmir, for example, Rav Ovadia Yosef always spoke about keeping chalak bet Yosef. But he writes in the Tshuva in Yabir Merchelik Vav, if you're at a wedding and you're stuck and you don't know if this meat is okay or not, you can rely on a sveika. But he pushed the inyan mitzad that the bit mitbachaim they should always keep yashan. I'm sure they should always keep chalak bet Yosef, and we as well also should do that. We should push the agencies as we see that it's an inyan that's very important to keep. And Baruch Hashem, we have shefa, we have yecholet. Why not? Why have to be somech on sfekot when we can be somech on something that's glat, and with the lists especially that's 100%. And Yerushalayim, obviously, if he's able to only go with this, Baruch haba. But to say that if something's in front of you, if it's vadei aser or not, especially if you're going to go all the way up to pletat kilim, that's something that the Talmidei Chachamim have to discuss among themselves and ask their morei hara what they could rely on and what they can't. I'm just bringing what the sfeikot are nowadays. So if you want to talk about a sfeik of the Ramah, there probably is a sfeik of the Rabbah. Safek maybe it's Yashan. Safek maybe it's from the surplus. Safek maybe this is something that they use winter wheat that had a lot of protein. There are heterim to discuss. Once again, there are certain products and at certain times of the year that a person might not want to rely on those sfeikot. Getting close to Pesach, he knows that this is coming from spring wheat. That a person could look into according to his discretion. But stamad de milta, a person has a product in front of him. It could be that he could rely on Yashan. And just to say that Rav Shlomo Miller, actually, when he was asked this question, he writes, Asher lafi nodati rov tvuah nimtzit besivotechem tvuah yeshana. What does he mean? He says, in California, they planted earlier. Now, at the beginning, when this tshuva came out, people said, "What do you mean?" But in California, they're getting it from Kansas, they're getting it from North Dakota. Interesting. A couple of weeks ago, when I gave the shir, I gave it in the LA Kollel. So somebody came out to me. He says that he actually works as a mashgiach in one of the flour, the milling places over here in California, and they have a large amount of flour that's grown over here. And I asked the Kansas manufacturer, and I think I asked that person also, I don't remember. So the people over here, when they asked their distributor to send them flour, he said it'll be much cheaper to bring it from California. So I say, Divrei Chachamim, you see that they that you have to be nizar when what they write. They have a cheshbon what they write. So even in other words, there is a suffix. I'm not saying it's always going to happen, but there is a probability that the tvua that they have over here, the distributor send it. It's like it's one company. It's called ADM, for example. They have a plant in Kansas. They have a plant in North Dakota. They have a plant in California. I'm giving an example. They will, if you as a bakery say, send me whatever amount of flour that I need, they'll opt for California. Less shipping. It's easier. So California could be a little bit.
Beer also would be the same thing.
It's very hard to be mavar beer. It seems when I spoke to one of the flour distributors, barley, but he knows about barley. He says that it takes them a while to get it, and sometimes also it could be from the surplus. So there's sfikot.
No, but it's like it's homegrown. Is it California grown the barley, or it's
I don't know.
From other states?
I don't know about barley. I know oats is definitely most of it is imported from Canada. I don't know about barley. Budweiser has a plant. Where do they get their barley from? I don't know.
San Francisco, I think nearby, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
Budweiser's right here, so.
Right.
Could be they get it from. So I don't know. I don't know. But what I would say is that malt. People want to be machmir on malt or not. Malt is 1%. Malt is 1%. Their Cheerios has malt in it. So even if they have, or if you know that the wheat is okay, but how about the oats is okay? Leave it if you want. But what the malt is 1%. So to be machmir on malt. It's a big chumrah. Even Rabbi Herman in his guide writes, you ask your rabbi because some people are makel on malt. So if he writes that, I think
bottom line,
a lot of
people.
people.
Like in a foreign beer,
so
you could be,
I would drink it. I don't like beer, but I would drink it if I would have to. In other words, that's what everybody has to decide. And this is where I'm leaving it a little bit an open end, because on one hand, we are different than in those generations. We have less of a shatat chak. On the other hand, we have many more sfeikot than they had. So when you have a product in front of you, karav lomar, that you could be makel because of rov, because of sveika, that you could rely on having that product and not have to be monea.
I mean, like in bread.
Well, breads, a lot of the breads, if they're coming from bakeries, it's worse. But let's say it's a pat akum bread. I know the rabbi wouldn't eat that. But let's say Monam would buy a pat akum bread. You don't know where it's coming from. Local bakeries will try to get high consistency and even speak to them. So a lot of times they'll get blended. A lot of times it matters on the amount of product. They don't ask, get me new spring wheat. I asked the guy, maybe the spring wheat from last year is not as fresh as this year. He says, no, on the contrary, when it's older, people like it more. So I don't know what to say anymore. It's like, it's so hard to be mevar. And I'm not saying it's vaday okay. I'm just saying that there's sfekot. And we know the halachot of sfikot. We have a shulchan aruch about sfikot. We have the Ramah about sfikot. And it's up to the tzibur to decide when they want to rely on the safek or not. But definitely, one thing is for sure is that one shouldn't just disregard the Isra of Yashan just because it's too hard. You should try as much as you can on things that are possible. You have a bakery in front of you that keeps Yashan, you encourage them and you buy from that. You see products, you encouraging, you buy from them, just like you do for Halak Bet Yosef. Just like you do for Chalak Bet Yosef. And the more that you create this awareness, the more that they will be pressured to do that. And many Ashkenazim are machmir as well. Reb Chaim Brisk was very machmir. A lot of briskers nowadays, people go to yeshivas brisk. So they're machmir in Yasha. So you have them being machmir. In Chicago, the whole place became much more aware of Yasha because Aaron Soloveitchik lived there and he wouldn't eat anything that was chadash. So it's becoming more available and readily available, but it's up to us to put that consumer pressure. And once we do that, there are going to be more people that are aware of it. So on the Yachid situation, when he could eat or not, that's one thing. But on the Rabbim situation, definitely there's an inyan to be machmir as much as we can.
Every Wednesday night, I have a shiur. Somebody brings me a can of beer. They ask, Yashan is that?
Well, what do the lists say? That's number one.
Until now, it was fine anyway. December 15th was the cutoff date.
December 15th was the cutoff.
For beer, for what?
For beer, December 15th.
So if it's foreign, it's not a problem.
I was told I think Heineken is Yashan always. That's what I heard from B'Shem him.
Over here they bring about Bud, Coors, Millers, Sam Adams.
This is the star
Up until,
cake.
like the rabbi said, up until December 15th. This is the star K based on Rabbi Herman's list. They just simplified it. Rabbi Herman's list for dummies. That's what they did. I don't know if they called it that, but basically it's the simplified list because people look at Rabbi Herman's list, they get overwhelmed. This is a simple list. But once again, this is telling you what's Vada Yashan.
I asked Rabbi Vadia when I moved here, I said, what should I do about Yashan? He said, if it's not available.
He said to me, make That's an
So,
important.
I told him, I go to fairs, it said, it's even glad kosher, but it's not Yashan. It's okay.
Okay, maybe it's
we
that.
have a list right now. Let's say pretzel. You don't have to be worried at all.
No.
No chumrah pretzel. Cookies. What about cookies?
Also not.
There is
No
no
problem.
chumrah to be machmir.
No,
Pretzel.
I don't think so.
Nothing.
I think
Why?
Rabbi Heinemann writes that as well, that you could be lenient, right?
Very good. That's pretzel.
Pretzels,
And I spoke to Rabbi Heinemann like last year about some of the findings. He wasn't aware of a lot of it. It could be he would be even more lenient if he knew about this. He knows a lot in Mitziut, but I'm wondering if maybe in light of this he would be more lenient.
The most crucial question is somebody from Yeshiva, is Yad Shamayim, comes at Red Shabbat, Mamash Red Shabbat to me and says, I have to go to my father-in-law's house.
Yeah, Rabbi Zion says it's on the back also.
Right.
But once again, Rav Ben Zion what didn't have all this information. He probably would have been even more lenient. He probably would have been even more lenient.
No, he says that I
But
have to
just
go
the
there.
big somach on the
The
back.
back plus the other suffix that he made.
I wasn't even mitzaref the Bach.
That's a suffix speka. He said for Shabbat, for Surah Mesech, and the back plus the suffix that maybe some consider.
Right.
It's not kosher.
So I think he would have been makel totally even during the week if he would have seen this information, but he's not around to ask.
Therefore, if somebody comes on a Shabbat and says we could give him a heter with the shad and nefesh, that you know that you could eat it.
I would think. I would think so. Just
like
like Rav Avadia says, you could eat meat that's not halak. You have a sveka. Suffix it's from last year's wheat because they have surplus. Suffix it's from this year. Maybe it was planted beforehand because there is a mute that was planted beforehand, even this year. Next year for sure there's going to be more wheat that's planted beforehand. Suffix that maybe it was winter wheat that had a lot of protein. And al kulana, you have the Bach, you have the Or Zarua, you have the Rabbeinu Baruch, you have the other poskim.
Now, if it's
Homemade for sure you could be makel because flour is for sure is rov yashan.
Even high gluten, you buy bread flour usually from high gluten.
That they have for sure a blend in it. It's not like the bakery. It's not like artisan. But usually the flour that you buy on unbleached flour, they have to look for high gluten. Usually the regular flour that people buy.
Even bread flour.
You want to go to the house and ask the lady, well, what type of flour did you use?
You have all-purpose.
See,
have bread flour.
you see, this is what I think. I think that when people come into Smart and Final, I know what I see them buying. They buy the regular flour, and that's what they bake their bread with.
All-purpose.
So
Bread flour.
Yeah,
You want
bread
bread
they don't use mizona, but they buy flour. Now you're right. You're more of a chacham that you know these types of flours. Am I mechuyev when I go to somebody's house and say, what was it? Bread flour? Was it this?
No, bread flour.
You don't have to. That's the stomach.
Bread flour.
My wife does olive eggs all the time. All purpose.
Herman writes that only one type of the technique.
So right away, what am I supposed to do now? I'm a simple person. I go, I see flour, I know that raw flour. This is bread, this is not. Who says I have to be mevar? Al pi Allah, who says I have to be mevar? And remember, when I keep on speaking to Rabbi Shlomo Miller about this issue. From now already, he says, okay, and people ask him, he says, just ask Lebhar because he doesn't want to deal with it. But he tells me, no, use Herman's list. He wants to be encouraged, even though limot that there's a heter.
Beer is not more kal.
Yes, there are kulas. I didn't get into that, but it's a shtia. Yeah, there are extra kulas. I want to speak after the kulas. I'm speaking after the kulas.
Bigger problem when you go if they have the challah is hamotzi or not. What would you say? Well, when people go to take the pita with them.
I'm the wrong person to ask.
Why?
I printed a long ma'amar about this.
Oh, yes.
That I printed in one of the kuvatzim in Eretz Yisrael, and I was of the opinion that challah should be hamotzi, and
even if it's sweet,
because this is how people treat it as bread nowadays. And I brought a couple of proofs to it. I could send it to you. And recently, Rav Yaakov Benaim was here a year ago, and he says, "I saw your mamar. This is what I've been saying for years as well. That I spoke this morning to Rav Gidon Ben Moshe about it. Actually, when he was in the kol, he says he also thinks that people should be able to make hamotzi. People are kover. I think Rav Menuchat Ahava, he told me, says such a thing. I didn't see it inside because you have the Magen Avram to rely, and you also have the that the Shabbat is kovar the maaser. But that's not why I'm saying that you can make a motzi. The reason be'eker why I'm saying you say a motzi is because people look at it as bread nowadays. It's very hard to say that it doesn't change from generation, because if you're going to say that it doesn't change from generation, then Rabbi Tzion brings a proof. Let's say you're having tea and cake. So if you say, it gets complicated in the sukkah. I'm sure you know some of the. If it's a suffix, so if you make a shehakol, you should pater up the cake because the cake is a suffix amotzi or not. If you're gonna, but we don't do that. We make a mezonot on the cake first, and then you make a bracha of shehakol on the tea because you understand that it's a vaday mezonot because it's a vaday snack. But nowadays we're looking at bread as vaday amotzi. You don't look at it as a vaday snack. You look at vaday hamotzi. It all depends. Rav Avadia at the end of his life would make hamotzi on matzah. So Rav Gidon told me he asked Rav Avadia what to do with the chalas nowadays because nowadays people usually use. He says well you can't be mashana the teva. You can't be mashana what's written in the poskim. Okay, so why did he change it legabe matzah? Matzah the poskim say to make a mezonot. I don't know. Rav Avadia seems to be would still say to make a mezonot on egg challah. I understand it. I mean, not that I'm any man de Amr, but I understand like the poskim would say to make a motzi nowadays, even for Sfaradim.
Wow. It's sweet. It's tasty.
So what? I use it. I have tasty.
The egg or the sugar. It's just a little tastier than regular white.
But it's quantity. It's amount. It's not.
It's how you're mityaches to it. Or do you look at it as bread or not? I look at it as bread. It's sweet bread, but I look at it as bread.
Kviyat Sudeh is how much you eat, not decision. What, 220 grams? Kviyat Sudeh is what?
But at the end he brings this heter.
The Rosh calls beer shish l'matir nivin as chametz.
I hear.
So you wouldn't.
So his father also passed with the Aruch HaShulchan. I told him maybe it's because beer, those days, chalutin, it was made in a way, it was boiled in hot water. Now there's also beer is dumped into hot water before it's processed. But it's not boiling water. It could be the Rosh's case was boiling water, so it killed the whole process of becoming chametz.
Could be chalita. That's a nice term. It's a good hara. It's a good hara.
But for beer,
is shishmatirian or not? That's the question. So beer is chametz. My name is chametz.
Thank you for the opportunity. How do we turn this off?
so you wouldn't.